Hi, everyone. Welcome. This is Ashley Tusignot. I'm the Senior Product Manager for Secure 9000. I'm joined today with Rick Folke. He's our Director of Product Management for Software House. I also have Paul Chasen on the line. He's our Regional Sales Manager for the Northeast. We're very excited to present to you today Software House hardware and Secure 9000 software best practices. This webinar is designed to show you how to harden your Secure 9000 system, successfully deploy OSTP reader communications, and to highlight some other useful features you may not know about in Secure 9000. A few quick housekeeping items just to begin. Your phones are muted, and that's just to prevent background noise. We will be taking questions throughout the webinar, so feel free to add them into the question box. And this will also be recorded, so we will be able to provide you a link to the full recording and PowerPoint after. So I'm going to pass things over to Paul.
Thanks, Ashley. Hi, this is Paul Chasen. I really just wanted to take a second to thank everybody for joining us and taking the time to spend the next hour with us, going through what we think is some exciting and informative practices that anybody and everybody can benefit from while spending time at home through this unfortunate time that we're going through. And we hope everybody's safe and managing through this. I will be on as a panelist here to support Rick and the team. And again, thank you for joining. Rick?
Great, thanks, Paul. Again, this is Rick Folke. Glad to be here and spending the next hour with you. But before we start, just a quick review of Software House. I guess this is sort of our first requisite slide. We are one of the major companies in the market, serving the access control industry for over 30 years. Paul's been there about 25 of those years, I believe, since high school. The last bullet here is really
Thanks for
important. So, yeah, sure. No customer left behind, and that also applies to no panel left behind. We do really make it a point to provide backward compatibility and support for your older hardware as you move up with your front-end platform. So we really put the extra effort in there, and want to make sure our customers get the best long-term investment they can from our systems. We're going to talk about Secure 9000 today. Again, it's our flagship industry-leading product. The software is called Secure 9000. The hardware is called the iStar family. And here are just some of the market differentiators. We can scale from 2 doors to 200,000 doors. We have a really strong integration platform, over 250 integrations now that use Secure as the front end. And we have a great go-to-market strategy. We sell only through our top tier certified channel partners. And we make sure these guys are trained and up to speed on the latest products, so you're getting a good installation from our system here. Okay, so what's on tap for today? I organized what I consider the best practices into groups, starting with the estimating portion of a system, through the commissioning portion, and then through the ongoing operations of your system. Again, I did that both for the hardware and the software products. And then I have some COVID-19 specific tools and techniques to share with you, which again, in this time, these might be important for your customers to help optimize their system in response to this pandemic. And hopefully we'll get some time. So as you go through the slides here, think of some best practices from your end and share them with the group. Ashley and Paul are standing by monitoring the question box. Okay, so it's not just for questions, it's also to share some of your thoughts on things. But this was a fun slide deck to put together. I pinged our tech support guys, our apps guys, our sales guys, and kind of asked them, hey, what are the things we should share here? So without further ado, let's dive into it.
Sure, and to note, once we receive all the questions, we reply back to any of the great questions after an FAQs document. So any good practices you can share, we'll be happy to add those in.
Great. Okay, first up is the estimating and the laying out of a system, right? You're starting from scratch. Okay, got this customer, and the first one I thought I'd lead with is, as far as the overall architecture, okay, we have a great enterprise feature. Enterprise architecture, it has satellite servers, it has a master server, but we have seen that some customers or some integrators jump too quick to this mass SaaS, in some cases because the system just has a remote site. So they figure, well, I better put a satellite server out there at that remote site. And the reality is the iStars do a very good job on their own for remote sites. They have a full database, they have event buffering in case you are offline, to the server. So, the first thing is, check with your area sales manager to review your layout. And, maybe you don't need a mass SaaS architecture, for certain customers. What it boils down to is, okay, the iStars are fine. Does the customer have client workstations at the remote site, like you see here? Okay, here's a satellite office. They have an iStar Edge, and they do want a satellite workstation, let's say. Okay, in most cases, that can just go right back to the secure server. Okay, if they really do absolutely need local alarm monitoring, if that network is down, that's when you have to go into a separate satellite server at that remote site. Okay, so in general, the mass SaaS ends up being great for large national customers. Global customers might have a SaaS at each continent, but just check with the customer, make sure you have their needs defined up front before you jump into a mass SaaS. One customer had 22 iStars and 6 SaaSes, for example. That's probably not the way to do it.
Yeah, and to that point, if you have a large client that's looking to do some load balancing just due to some latency on the network, and it's a large deployment across multiple locations, then we've looked at regional servers to help with that load balancing. If it's not necessarily a redundant requirement for alarm monitoring, but they're looking to actually speed things up in a client workstation, that's also another use case for it. But definitely not something we want to just plug into any account that has multiple locations, for sure. So it's a good slide.
Okay, let's talk about the hardware now. And again, there's a lot of choices here. Software House has a great family of iStars to choose from. I kind of boil them down into 3 buckets here. You can go the centralized approach with the bigger iStar Ultra, Ultra SE, and that has some benefits. One panel handles 16 or more, up to 32 readers if you include wireless locks. In fact, we are adding support for 4 ACMs, by the way, in the 2.9 SP1 release. There's a little sneak preview for you. So you could have up to 32 hardwired readers in one panel, and that's good if you're concerned about IT drops, IP addresses. It does have higher wiring costs, though. All those banana cables going back to the panel. The iStar Edge is a great choice for sort of in the middle, up to 4 readers per standalone panel. And then the pure Cat5 deployment would really involve IP ACM door modules that you see down here, where you have the local wiring going back to the IP ACM, and then the iStar Ultra GCM handling the go, no-go decision in the full database. And that really gets your costs down for installation, especially if you can use PoE. So there's no extra power supplies to deal with. So there's a lot of choices here, and sometimes a hybrid approach is best. But again, if you have questions, your area sales managers are standing by to help you, choose the right products. And the iStars need power, right? So we have a great power supply lineup in the price book, but it all comes down to math. How much power does each device take? What's the total? What's your battery charging requirements? We do have a nice calculator online that goes through and helps you size up the power supply that you need. Okay. We also have a fairly new line of what we're calling pre-wired power supplies. which they have room for the iStar boards inside. So here you see a 16 reader unit. You have room and standoffs all set to pop in your ACMs and your GCM up here. You just hook up the connectors. So it really helps to standardize, especially if you have larger customers with disparate geographies and want to keep things consistent. On the reader front, for best practices, just a word of warning, just watch out for the COS and the things, the elite keys. HID is a great partner of ours, don't get me wrong. We sell and support all their products. They have great OSDP readers. But when the customer goes to elite keys, you gotta get that key in the reader somehow. And it's a little tougher when it's one of our readers, like the touchscreen reader. It needs some special config cards to inject the key. And how about lock sets? How do you inject the keys into lock sets, for wireless lock? So just be aware of that. Sometimes you need to work with HID to get those config cards going. And the fourth thing, as far as the estimating aspect, and actually you can jump in here, is
Yeah, sure.
make sure the integrations you need are up to date.
Yeah, the matrix is an important first step in any project planning. And this is really to ensure that any of the integrations are going to be compatible on whatever rev of Secure you're looking to upgrade to. So just this is a quick snapshot, and we have a hot link here that you'll be able to click on the link if you're not familiar where to find it. But in the two tabs here, we have a quick view, and that can pull up the product version names, the Secure Rev compatibility, any supported operating system information would also be housed in there. Also, what type of integration it is it an SDK? Is it a web service? The license number that would be required at the time of order, and also where you would go to receive the actual driver. Is it a download? Is it a software house internal integration where you would go to software downloads, or is it a third-party integration by one of our connected partners? On the integration details tab, that's going to house all of the related manuals to the integration. And something else to note is if you've ever noticed some of the integrations are grayed out, this just generally means that the last rev that they're compatible with, like for instance, the one here for Amitis is version 2.5.0. So we're currently on version 2.8. So if there's several versions behind, oftentimes they'll be grayed out just because they're not current any longer with what we have available. So again, overall, this is just a good starting point for your project planning. And if you have any matrix related questions for our Connected Partner Program, our contact is Noelle Perry, and she's on our team.
Right.
I'm going to pause here. Rick, we did get a few questions come in if you want to answer the next section.
Okay, sure, we'll take a few.
Yeah, so the first one that came in is, can you please share what the biggest Secure 9000 system running, if not possible, with the customer name, at least the size? Do we know like what our biggest customer? Paul, you might have some insight to that.
Yeah, there's a few candidates, and we don't want to give out names here, but we have systems that are upwards of 35 to 50,000 readers, maybe, over 20 SASs in a huge global enterprise architecture. We actually test to 40 SASs in our QA lab, each with 5,000 readers on it, with simulated and with actual iStars. So we have some nice customers that are getting up there.
Yeah, single server definitely upwards of 5,000, and then to Rick's point, I'm pretty sure we're right around 50,000 on an enterprise solution out there today.
Okay. The next question is, does the IPACM have any local memory or the ability to allow authorized personnel in the event the IPACM loses communication with the GCM?
Yeah, there's an offline mode. It's not as powerful as an iStar, of course, but it does save the last 1,000 known good cardholders in a local cached database. Let those frequent people in if it happens to be offline from the iStar.
Okay. Somebody else asked, is there, a major difference between life safety power and versus electronics?
They're both good companies. Electronics has been around for a while. We just happen to partner with Life Safety. They have a great, network module with an integration to Secure that you can use to monitor power supplies directly, to have alarms come in, to do battery tests. So it's really worked out great. They have a great panel shop to do those pre-wired. So, they're both good, but we just happen to have a good partnership going with Life Safety.
Okay, I'm going to take one more and then we can move along. And again, we will get back to everybody for a list of FAQs that come in if we don't get to your question. But is there an issue in offline mode with the IPACM for OSDP readers?
I'm sorry, yeah, is there an issue with what?
Will the IPACM work in offline mode for OSDP readers?
Oh, for the IPACM, yes, it does. You have to have one of the more recent firmware revs, but yes, we added support for offline mode for weekend and for OSDP. Good question. So, okay, let's keep going here. So now you got your Secure system estimated, you're putting it in, and here are some tips and tricks to help that portion of the job go smoother. First thing up is to all get around a table and set up a good, consistent naming convention. Okay, everything needs a name, right? Every reader, every panel, every clearance. So it's good to, design it out ahead of time. Okay, and will the system grow from being in, a local area to a national area or even global? If so, you better allow for extra space in the name for the country, for example. So here's a device naming convention. You have region, state, site, building, everything with like 2 or 3 characters with a dot, for example. Clearances might have a different naming convention, region dot, site dot, the definition, and then maybe the time range in parentheses. So if you keep it consistent, you'll really do the customer a world of good. It should help to keep response times down. The operators can respond. They know, these conventions by heart over time. Okay, do a little shout out to Northland. They have a nice little white paper they wrote on this very topic. Okay, now if you do mess up and you want to go back and change things, we have a fairly recent rename function in Secure. If you right-click on a cluster like I'm doing here, these right-click menus are great, by the way. There's so much you can do with a right-click, but one of them now is called rename, and it brings up this little screen here, and you can like edit the object names on the fly at the same time in that screen. And there's even a search and replace feature now. If you want to like change the the site designation or something, just go through the whole cluster's worth of things and change in that way. So check it out. It's called rename under the cluster. Okay, second thing here is meta tags. This is only in 2.8 and above. It's a great reason to migrate to 2.8, right? Actually, do you want to take over on this one?
Yep, so that was one of the great features that we added last summer with 2.8. So really this just provides the ability to tag or associate content to an object so that you can easily find and manage your system later. So from either the tag manager, which is highlighted here with the red arrow, or from a right-click action where you can associate a tag, you have the ability to select one or more locations to associate with that object. So here in the example in the first bullet, you're going to see location tags for, this is for our Massachusetts Westford office. So you can see how it can drill down between campus, floor. You can also set up general tags. So a good example of this would be data center doors or battery devices. That's especially useful when you want to go around and do battery swap outs. So really, we're encouraging people to tag their systems. The more you tag, the better. It's just going to help broaden your system search capabilities.
Yeah, that new smart search, by the way, that's also in 2.8. That is a key for large systems. And more tags you have, the better search results you get. Okay. Okay, next up in the installation and commissioning side of things is to harden your system. Not just cyber harden, that's important too, but just basic things like, don't share accounts between technicians. Come on, every individual person should have their own account, so they're responsible for what they're doing. You can, trace back and see who did what. And, to that effect, put the time into program privileges so that certain operators can't do certain things. A lot of times you'll see guards with a system all account and they haven't even done any new activity views. It's just the default view, so there's a really powerful, privilege and partition design methodology in Secure to use. And as far as the cyber hardening, that is a key component, right, of any system today. Starting with the BIOS of the PC. You can turn off USB booting, for example, to keep things secure. On the controller side, you can use dark mode, which is our FIPS 140 mode, which basically turns off everything but the server to panel communications. Even within there, you have some choices. I'd use the ECC keys. Those are a lot stronger than the old RSA 1024s. Put in custom certificates. And even on the SQL side, if it's on a separate SQL machine, well, you better encrypt that connection too. So here's some of the screenshots. How you do the cluster configuration over here. We are almost finished with a hardening guide, which is based on 2.9 actually, which is coming out in a few months here, but it does apply, to other revs as well. And that'll be our go forward document for this type of hardening. Okay, when you're commissioning things, you want to be in the field and bring up the live view of, let's say, that one door. Well, there's a monitor feature, which I believe was started in 2.5 or 2.6, but it's great. So one of my personal favorites here, you can right click on any one device or door and just say monitor, and it brings up a little ad hoc viewing window of just that device's state changes. You can do it on Secure Go, like I'm showing here, or through the monitoring station or the admin station. It's just a nice quick way to focus in on one thing as you check it out and exercise all the different points. Okay, so you have your system up and running. How do you want to optimize it now? What are the best ways you can really get the most out of your system? Well, we have a ton of system variables for your use. Okay, I'm not going to go through all of them. That would take about 5 hours here, but here are 3 that I, tend to use in my demos and, telling people to use them here. One is field level audits, which means recording the previous and the new value of any data fields that are changed. So if I edit a door and change the description, I'm going to store the previous description and the new description value in the audit. Okay, there's 2 of them here, one for everything but personnel and one for just personnel auditing. So if I change somebody's department or last name or whatever, they'll store those values in the audit for me. These are turned off by default just to save database size, so you got to go in there and turn them on. Second is to show the card number in the activity monitor in the journal, right? That's defaulted off, but if you do want to keep it off for security reasons, that's fine, but most integrators like to turn it on so they get that extra little bit of information coming through the monitoring station. And then we also have a nice sort of self-cleaning feature of the system, the user lose it feature for personnel. And this basically disables personnel that haven't used their card anywhere in the system in X number of days. That's turned off by default. So you go in there and you can turn it on. And the next one here is the time that the cleanup takes place, and it defaults to midnight. Now the actual number of days that will cause the cleanup is configurable per personnel type. So some personnel type can have a longer cleanup period. Others could be shorter. You know, contractors could be 1 month maybe, and employees could be 1 year. I don't know. But yeah, it's just a nice little extra measure to keep your system tuned up. Okay. This one is, standard fare, right? I mean, back up your database, but you'd be surprised how many tech support calls we get where, we offer support and, well, we can't do it. Okay, why don't you go back to the backup? What backup? Okay, you got to back up the database. Okay, there's manual ways to do it. You can do it automatically in a schedule. You can, do it to network drives, to shared drives, whatever. Just back up that database, as often as you can, even every day. I did want to point out in 2.7, we did change the database architecture so that every journal volume is a separate SQL database now. And this has a lot of implications. Most of them are good. I mean, the backup speed now is incredibly fast. The database size is smaller. You can set the number of days now for each journal volume. 90 days is default for smaller databases. 30 is the larger one, but you can set that up to 1,000. So you can have like a yearly database volume to keep things organized here. And it's a lot easier to restore databases that way as well. Okay, next up is on the personnel side. One way to keep your clearance database down is to use expiring clearances. This is only on iStar Ultras. Okay, so if you have pros, I'm sorry, you gotta do some upgrading here, but basically the premise is that besides the clearance itself having a start and stop time, which would affect all people using that clearance, you can now within the personnel record start and stop the clearance for that one person. So I can give in this case, what's this, the barn door. I can give the barn door clearance to one person for maybe just 2 weeks. I can give the same barn door clearance to this other person forever. Okay, so it's really a nice way to keep the number of clearances you have in your system down, and just use the same ones with different time frames. Okay, it's called expiring clearances per person. You set this little checkbox in the clearance name, in the clearance editor. Okay, this is a sneak preview. This is really cool. The larger the job, the more chance you have of what we're calling runaway inputs happening. That input that, the wiring got skinned as the guy turned the corner and now it's frayed and it kind of goes on, off, on, off, on, off, or, the big area handling unit starts up, there's a big vibration going on and the door sensor just chatters all day. That can really bring a server to its knees if it's putting in 1,000 transactions at a time and right into the database. So in the next service packs that are coming out within the next week or two, there's a new feature called automatic detection of these high activity inputs. So we monitor both the active state and the supervision state, okay? And if we see any one input coming in at a very high threshold of activity, we mark the input as high activity, and we stop writing to the database for that input. The iStar driver still processes it, but we're just not going the next step and writing it to the database. Okay, the defaults can be changed, but we're starting off with 500 changes seen in 5 minutes. So it's like almost 2 a second for 5 minutes. Something's wrong if that's happening there. So this is a great feature to implement. Even small systems could benefit from it. Because these inputs happen all the time. Here's a graph. All of a sudden, boom, you get these inputs just chattering away. Now, going forward, I'd love to go the next step and catch these at the controller level, so the driver doesn't even get them. Okay, and that's on our roadmap for the firmware group. But at least for now, we can catch them at the server level and keep the server up and running.
And I know we didn't add it into this deck, Rick, but another great tool that came out last summer in 2.8 was that health diagnostics dashboard, a little bit of a tongue twister, but that's the rolling 7-day view of how your system's overall health is, and you can see communication errors or faulty areas in communication as well. So that's something to look at.
Right. Oh, yeah. Good point. Yeah, we just couldn't make it in this deck here. You want to keep this thing to an hour, not 2 or 3, right?
We're trying
Yeah.
our best.
Yeah. That is a good.
Yeah, we wanted to
Good
drop in here just a friendly reminder to keep your software support agreements, or what we like to call our SSAs, up to date, and to upgrade your system every 2 years at least. This is just ensuring that your system is under support and it's running healthy. With a valid SSA, you have access to our core software releases. So we generally have one core release a year, and then several service packs, which can have key bug fixes, but also features that we, sneak in there before the next latest and greatest release. You also have technical support and other updates for your system that are, all part of the SSA renewal. So our standard support is for the current rev of the software and one prior. So right now we're running 2.8, so you would have 2.8 and 2.7. We also cover 2 revs back for a period of 6 months when a new rev launches. So just keep note of that. And that is, also listed out into the price book in our SSA policy guide. But you also have the opportunity to have a dev system set up for upgrade and testing before you're looking to implement this on the live scene. So that's at no additional cost to you. So another good reminder there.
Right. There's no upfront cost. There is a slight upgrade to the SSA cost to maintain that dev license. But yeah, check with the area sales manager. We really want to encourage those dev licenses for, any, system of, medium to large size.
Yeah, they're definitely becoming more and more of a requirement, less than a recommendation at some of these clients.
All right.
Sure. And then, it might come, a question that comes up periodically is what's the difference between your standard or enhanced SSA offering? So here's a little chart. Really, the key differentiator is just if you need 24/7, 365 days a year support, or, just normal business hours. The rest is all the same, no matter the level, but we encourage people to do enhanced if they can. Another key item to note here is that our technical support team really only takes calls from our certified integrators. This is to ensure that your system is getting the proper care it needs, and that the people that understand it the best are the ones that are calling into it. So that's just one more item to note regarding SSAs.
Right.
Okay. We have some questions
on this
system. Yeah, on this section. So give me a second. Do we have any of these system variables that are required to stop drivers on Secure for changes to take effect?
System variables to stop the drive. Oh, yeah, there are some variables that require an iStar driver restart. Like if you change the number of credentials per person, like from the default of 1 to 5, that takes a restart. I believe those are documented in the system maintenance guide. It goes through all the different system variables and which ones take a restart.
Okay, for expiring clearances per person, is it going to be available on the Edge G2?
Of course. Yep. Oh yeah.
Every that was an easy one. I'm giving you an easy one.
Yeah, that was a softball.
I swear I didn't write it.
Okay, any other ones?
One on expiring clearances, hold on. For expiring clearances, does the clearance remove after then end date?
Yes, there is a nice cleanup routine. It's that same schedule as the use or lose it. So basically at midnight or whatever time you choose, there's a background task that starts. It cleans up all the actual expired clearances that are expired, and it does the use or lose it thing as well. So yeah, you actually maintain better memory in your panels that way.
Okay. There's a question coming on also regarding support. If a customer or end user is certified, are they able to call in? So I believe in some cases, yes, there is special training for that. And I don't know if the integrator needs to be involved? Paul, you might know better.
So, there is a direct support model. It's definitely, it's an option. It's not something that we see used in more than 90% of our installations. But if the end user is requesting direct support, there's an uplift to the SSA. The SSA has to be an enhanced SSA, and there are required training classes depending upon the installation. So, the basic installer course and then advanced is required. And then if it's an enterprise system or a redundant system, those training classes are required as well for obvious reasons. So, and we do have documentation on that that we can share. If anybody has any questions, just contact their area sales manager. It is coming up more and more, but it's a small percentage of our installations. And if they do have a direct support model, they have to have a valid SSA with the integrator, but the integrator does not need to be on the line if the individual that's certified is calling in. So we don't certify the entire location and customer. We certify specific individuals that are trained to call in, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Oh, here's a suggestion. We got our first suggestion in. They said active email server in Secure 9000 in order to receive alarms by email.
Huh. Okay, yeah, the email server 9000 is, I don't know, it's next up on the list to get a little facelift. You have some nice ideas on that, so yeah, that's good.
Sure.
Good suggestion.
All right, well, why don't we
Okay,
keep moving?
Let's turn over now to the hardware. Okay, the iStock controllers and some other types of hardware here. So first up is the wiring. I know we're all in the security industry and we all talk about supervised inputs, but there's still a lot of installs going on where they're not supervised. So please use end-of-line resistors and actually put them at the end of the line, not the panel. Okay, don't scrimp, put them back out at the device where they should be. As the controllers went through their iterations here, you'll see a little improvement. The Pro had a double 1K resistor only as a choice. The Edge and the EX, we came out with about 24 different choices of resistor types and circuits, right? And it was selectable per panel. So every input in the same panel had to be of the same input circuit. On the Ultra and beyond, the input supervision is selectable per input now. So you can really have at it and do some that are unsupervised if you really have to, others that are 1K, double, and whatever. Okay, on the output side, I wouldn't use the RM reader's output for the actual lock, just as a best practice. It's on the unsecure side of the area. Put the lock power and control back, in the ceiling with an RM module or an edge or somewhere. Okay, just not in the back of the reader. Okay, on the Ultra, just a reminder that the ACMs on the Ultra have lock power management built in. So you don't need that extra separate interface board. We have separate fusing and protection on each output that can be used to control up to 3/4 of an amp out to each lock. So it's a nice feature. Just run separate power in here. You see one 12 volt for the board. Here's a 24 volt in for the locks. Then you can individually control the locks through the ACM. So it'll save you some install time. Now we talked about hardening. In the software section, here's just a further slide for details. If you've noticed with the new firmware, when you first boot up a panel, an iStar Ultra, you got to change that web password before you do anything else. And that's actually per a new California IoT law, which specifies either unique passwords from the factory or requires a change of that password when it first gets booted up. So that's why. It's also a good thing, always, it doesn't hurt to have, unique passwords here. Once you change it, then Secure can manage the password, and you could put the same password in for each panel or each set of panels per building or whatever. You can change them when you need to, but Secure does enforce a strength on the password here. Okay, you got to have, at least one upper, one lower, one digit, and all that. Okay. Other things to do in your iStar, you can encrypt the iStar Ultra database now with 66B and above. You can actually turn off TLS 1.0 and 1.1, so you only use TLS 1.2, which some customers are demanding. In 2.8, that's actually a moot point because the server doesn't even have 1.0 and 1.1 turned on. In the cluster, though, you got to do it at the panel. If you have a master, you have to turn off TLS 1.0 and 1.1 so that the members don't talk, those lower authentication modes. Okay, and there's, the whole dark mode as well. That'd be good to use. It's easy to use defaults, but go the extra mile and put it in dark mode. On the reader side, we are really seeing a big uptick in the adoption of OSDP, which is the industry standard now for field level communications between readers and panels. For the most part, it's a nice two-way encrypted RS-45 bus. It gives you built-in tamper and no comm alarms. It also gives us text displays, on readers that have the text, like two-line display. So yeah, we're all on board. We are on the committee, even on the working group. There's some nice firmware download features coming out, so you can download firmware to the read heads. That's being looked at as part of the standard now as well. So I encourage you, either for new jobs or even for existing jobs, when the customer wants to do a reader upgrade, to look at OSDP and plan accordingly. And that's available on the Ultras and the IPACMs and the new Edge G2, by the way. Okay, here's some basic maintenance. We have different battery uses for different panels. The Edge, for example, uses 4 AA batteries. I would definitely turn on the battery fault virtual input and monitor that, and even set it up with a trigger, for an event. Okay, so if your batteries are getting too low, then you'll know to change them. On the Pro, it's a separate battery pack, and that basically maintains your RAM and your clock for about a day. Those should be replaced every 2 years. Now on the Ultra, okay, there's no full battery there for shutdown, so it's a coin cell for the real-time clock. And that should last you at least 5 years, but if you have a lot of power outages, that thing will get will get drained a little quicker. Just going forward, we are looking at the smaller rechargeable lithiums that will last you forever. So our overall mantra, by the way, for hardware is the less maintenance needed, the better. So we are really on board looking at service records as we design new products. Okay, this is sort of a standard, right? Monitor comm fail alarms. But did you know that you can monitor the GCM to ACM comms between your boards on an Ultra? Okay, there's 2 processors on each ACM, so there's 2 comm fail inputs. So turn those on. Okay, and you'll get the notices in case anything happens within your panel there. You can trigger events on those as well. Trigger events on your basic online status for your iStars. Okay, just good maintenance. Hopefully you won't have those activities come in, but you got to set your system up to look for them. And then on the Ultras, okay, we automatically back up the database to the local flash memory of the panel every time we download a fast personnel download to the panel, and every time that you press the reset button. Well, how about though if you haven't reset it in a while and you haven't restarted your driver in a while? You might want to consider doing some more backups. And one thing you could do is trigger a backup event from the low battery input, for example. If you have a power supply wired into the GCM with a low battery alarm, and or maybe the AC fail alarm, any one of those, trigger a database backup. So you get a nice fresh database before the power craps out. Or even on schedule, do a weekly or nightly backup to flash each panel. Okay, If you see here the event, the action would be, backup database. Okay. And the action that would be, there's an actual action called, backup local database. Okay, so that's it for the hardware. It's for things to use for your system. I'm going to keep going because this is a pretty important final session here, and this is looking at Secure in order to help respond to the COVID-19 situation these days. Just some tools, some techniques that might be of use to some of your customers. In fact, this first one, one of Paul's customers came to us with this use case. So basically, they want to change their campus. Usually, people come in through different buildings, right? Building 3, building 5. Well, now because of the outbreak, they want to have everybody come in building 1 and get screened. Okay, so instead of having to change clearances every day and imports and SDK work, we actually decided that you can use the after hours enabling reader feature to enforce this type of screening. So basically, you'd set it up so that reader 1 is your enabling reader, and readers 2, 3, 4, and 5, they are the ones that get enabled only after reader 1 has a card swipe. It's a per person basis. So when I swipe into building 1, okay, I get in, and then I get enabled for the other readers in that after hours group. So you got to set up an after hours group of these readers. That's in your hardware tree right at the top. And then in the enabling reader, okay, you see the screen here, you check it to enable it. You tell it what group, to enable. Then you give it a schedule. And normally, like the main use case is, okay, it's only for weekends, right? Well, in this case, the schedule's on all the time, except for like a minute at midnight. And that kind of just toggles it to reset for the next day. So it's a great way to just funnel employees or card holders through a certain reader to then go to other readers.
Yeah, just to Rick's point, the initial design was really for a weekend type scenario, but after looking more and more at the COVID situation that we're in with temperature scanners and requirements to have people come through a single point of entry, this fit in perfectly. So I think we're going to see some release notes or some type of a marketing release on this, Rick, just kind of detailing a little bit more.
Right, yeah. We have, this being worked on now. Okay, so this is one technique to use. A second one would be using our good friend, the clearance filter, right, which is a feature that's been around for a while. And it's a great way to basically restrict access quickly to a lot of people at once. If something happens, okay, you don't want to just restrict access to the whole building except for this group of designated personnel, your essential personnel maybe. Okay, so to review, clearance filters are basically, it's a math problem, right? The personnel has a clearance filter value of 1 to 6, and so does the reader. And so if the clearance filter levels match, the cardholder to that reader, then access is granted if the other clearances and other rules are okay as well, like the card's not expired or stolen, or the schedule's, okay. If the employee's clearance filter is lower than the reader's clearance filter, then forget it. You're just not getting in. I don't care what else is true, you're just not getting in that reader. So you can implement it by setting your essential personnel's clearance filter to a higher value. And then when there's an issue, when there's an event, you can raise the clearance filter on those readers to something that'll lock out the bulk of your employees and just let the essential employees in to that space. Once you get the events set up, you can then put them on maps. You can, use them from list views, whatever. It's just getting that event set up to raise and then restore the clearance filter. Okay. You can set the clearance filters, quickly in bulk here. I'm showing I selected these 8 people. I do a right click, set property. The property is clearance filter, and I can set it to one of those 6 different levels quickly. So if I want to do that to my designated personnel, that'd be the best way to do it. Okay. Next up, I'm putting in a slide here on the Go Reader, for portable enforcement in this situation, right? The Go Reader takes, the full database of 9,000, or you can set up as a clearance. So only certain people that have that clearance will be vetted on that portable unit. So you could have your essential personnel with the clearance. So they get green, they're allowed to go in this area, but the other personnel get red. Sorry, you're not allowed in here. You could use it for that, use it for random screening. There's a random screening feature in there, so you can set it for, whatever, 3% of the card admits will get a random screening reject, and they can be set aside for additional screening. And it has the roll call mustering feature in there. So in case something happens, everyone's got off the parking lot, you can use the Go Readers to maintain a list of who is out there, and more importantly, who is still left in the building that we need to go and find out where they are. Then in 2.7, I don't know if you knew, but there's also an option to record the GIS tracking locations of every card swipe. And then once the card swipes get back in the database and Secure, they can be mapped, on the monitoring station or the admin station even. You can pull it up from the journal, right-click, show location on map. You can see at a glance where those card access transactions happened. Okay, and then last up for the COVID-19 response toolkit, if you will, is a new report that we just posted today to the Software House website. It's called a Contagion report. And the basic premise is that you want to find out for a certain possibly positive person, well, who else has used those same readers and is therefore more at risk of, being positive as well. Okay, so the report asks you for what person or people, you can do a few people at once here, and what doors, if there's a certain set of doors you want to only focus on. If you have a job with 5,000 doors and 10,000 people, please don't just use defaults because it'll take forever for this report. You got to focus on a few people here, okay? But it basically gives you the report of that person's activity plus the potential contact with personnel 1 minute before that transaction and up to 15 minutes afterwards. Okay, so if you look at the example here, I'm doing it for Evan Hill, and he went through the Boca Main South door, and it looks like Ernest Wu went through there 13 minutes and 58 seconds later. So that's a potential risk. Now here's one. He went through this Main South door, and look, there's Isaac Brooks, who went right through, 42 seconds later. So, that's in red because it's really close. So it's a quick way to just figure out, which specific employees or cardholders would be, more at risk, okay, for this situation here. You can change this 1 minute and this 15-minute timer within the report definition. Okay, so that's it. Any questions on the, the last few slides? Actually, how are we doing for questions here?
A couple. Well, I should say we have a lot, but I'll try to pick up a few easy ones because we're almost at the top of the hour, and then we'll get back to everybody else. Are you able to create a report about the GIS location when someone's using the Go Reader?
I'm sorry, what's that? You're breaking up a little bit.
Sorry about that. Can we create a report about the GIS location when someone's using the Go Reader?
Can we create a report when somebody's using the Go Reader?
For the GIS location specifically?
Well, the report would have the GIS locations in there. I'm not sure. They'll have to take that one offline. It might be they want to do like a report with a graphical map included in the report with all the pins on the map for the locations of the card swipes.
Okay. Do we have any best practices, suggestions for wiring and programming interfaces to automatic door openers or door interlocking?
I don't believe you do. That's good. It's a good suggestion. Like the ins and outs of, door interlocks, man traps, that sort of thing. We've all done them with events over the years and just IO linking, but I don't think we have any actual document there. It's a good point.
Okay, for the Contagion report, and somebody did ask where that was. So if you go to the Software House website under software downloads, it's the first link on that page under Secure. But they're asking, can this be run on an enterprise mass level, or does it have to be run on each individual SaaS within the mass?
Well, if you have journal synchronization going on, which is usually a scheduled thing between mass and SaaS, the mass will eventually have all the history for the whole system. So you could run that on the mass at that point. Okay, or keep it at the SaaS level, either way. Okay. Do we want to pause? Maybe, are there any best practices that have come in? Any other suggestions? Is it all just questions?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, it's mostly questions, but feel free to reach out to us after this and we'll be happy to compile any additional best practices. I'm just trying to see if there's any more. It might be best, Rick, where we're at the top of the hour, to get back to these all later in a follow-up document, because it's all different sections that they're going through.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we'd be here for like an hour answering all these questions, right?
We'd be here another hour.
Okay.
All right.
Well, good. That's great, though, that we're
joining.
getting all this feedback. I like to hear it.
That's great. All right.
Yeah, Paul, you trying to say something there?
No, it's a great job. Appreciate it, and looking forward to seeing some follow-up.
Great. Yep. So we will
Okay.
send a link with this recording and any follow-up answers to the questions that have come in. Thank you all for participating. And if you think of any best practices for us, feel free to send those along.
Yeah, well, great. So thanks a lot, everyone. We'll talk to you soon.
Be safe.